Hi, my name is Jackson Crawford. I'm a specialist in the Old Norse language, previously teaching at several universities, and now making my living thanks to my generous community of Patreon supporters and educating the internet, in as much as people on the internet want to know about things like Norse language, myth, culture, runes, and etc. Now, about a year and a half ago, I made a video about the very famous symbol, often mistakenly called a rune, but I prefer the term sigil. It certainly isn't technically a rune, called Ægishjálmur, and I'll use the modern Icelandic pronunciation because these come from pretty late manuscripts. And I'm happy with that video, and a lot of what I say in it applies to other magical sigils that I get asked about. But I get asked so much about some particular ones, and in particular, the actually pretty similar looking Vegvísir, that I wanted to make a video about it in particular, and also reiterate some of the real important points about these sigils and how they aren't runes. Now, this video could be real short because there's actually not much to say about Vegvísir itself. It appears on page 26 verso of the Huld manuscript, which you can see on handrit.is, actually an excellent internet resource. You can look at lots of very high quality scans of Icelandic manuscripts there. This manuscript is actually written in 1860 in Iceland by a Geir Vigfusson. Now consider 1860. That is, yes, old. Yes, no one who was alive then is alive now, but it is a lot closer to us than to a time before Scandinavia converted to Christianity around the year 1000. Right? That is well worth considering. The 1860s are already a time that looks back on the time of the pre-Christian North in romantic, nostalgic tones, and already a time that people feel, like the modern world and its science and technology and neutral institutions is, some kind of pale reflection of a romanticized past. It is closer to us than to them. Now, however old this symbol is and the notions about it are, the text on that page 26v just says, and I'm going to read this in modern Icelandic pronunciation because it's so recent. Beri maður stafi þessa á sér, villis maður ekki, í hríðum né vondu veðri, þó ókunnugur sé. Let a man carry these staves on himself. The man will not get lost in storms nor bad weather, though he is unacquainted. Presumably something like unacquainted with the road, the way through, the landscape, that kind of thing. So we have a symbol that perhaps more than coincidentally resembles a compass and is supposed to accomplish, what its name suggests. Veg is way, path, road. Vísir is shower. So it's the pathfinder sigil. It's supposed to help you find your way. What it can't do is find its way all the way back to the Viking Age. So let me give you a quick word from my friends and partners at Grimfrost, and I'll come back and talk about why I am not confident that this goes back to the Viking Age, and it does not count as a, quote, rune. Now, the runes are an alphabet. There are actually several different runic alphabets, the Elder Futhark is the oldest and most famous. It is a 24-letter alphabet used to write the ancestor of Old Norse and Old English, the language we can roughly call Proto-Germanic. Although most of the inscriptions are a little bit late to be exactly Proto-Germanic, they are going to tend to be something that are kind of like Proto-Norse, Proto-English. And then we have a later development of that called Younger Futhark, used to write Old Norse during the Viking Age. Though that alphabet is fairly little known, there's actually a lot more written in it. There's also a development of the Elder Futhark that we can call Old English runes, or the Anglo-Saxon Futhark, used to write Old English at about the same time as the Younger Futhark was used for Old Norse. The Younger Futhark is about 16 letters. The Old English Futhark, something like 30. They develop out of the 24-letter Elder Futhark. But these are alphabets, like our A, B, C, D, E. Each symbol representing a sound or several sounds, especially in the case of the Younger Futhark, which is a pretty inefficient writing system. They are not sets of symbols. They're not wingdings, right? They're not even a yield or a stop sign. They have names. So, for example, the very first one in Elder Futhark, its name must have been Fehu, based on the fact that it's called Fe in Old Norse and Fech in Old English, which goes back to Proto-Germanic Fehu, meaning money. But it doesn't represent the concept money. It can represent maybe the word money, but it's not a symbol for wealth per se. They have names presumably more as mnemonic devices or as a matter of tradition than as matters of magic. Now, these alphabets get associated strongly with magic, but maybe only after they cease to be in common use. We often have kind of unalphabetic associations with writing systems that we don't use. Consider the way that you can write in fakey-looking Cyrillic letters, just turning your R's backwards or something, to suggest something Soviet or otherwise Russian. And how many restaurants use, fonts that are supposed to suggest Chinese writing or Indian Devanagari writing in order to suggest something, associated with that culture, right? Suggest some kind of authenticity. In the same way, runes might have been used by early Christian Scandinavians, and there's good reason to think that they were. It's just something that had kind of mysterious ancient associations. Now, we do see in poems in the Poetic Edda, the manuscript that contains the myths of gods such as Odin, Thor, Loki, etc., some evidence of runes being attributed magical powers. For example, Odin says in the poem Havamal, what you ask of runes will prove true. The Valkyrie in the poem Sigurdrifamal advises the hero Sigurdur that he needs to learn runes to accomplish various purposes like seducing women and healing and things like that. But we don't necessarily know how old those concepts are, and we don't necessarily, right, the poems themselves might be from the 900s or so, or parts of them might be, but we don't necessarily know that these particular parts that talk about runes and their magical capabilities are that old. And we don't necessarily know that what they're talking about isn't spells that are written out in runic letters, right? Most of what's written in runes anywhere is pretty pedestrian. It's memorial inscriptions, it's even shopping lists and things like that. Magical things can be written out in runes. In fact, I've talked in another video about that. But it doesn't mean that the letters themselves are regarded as fundamentally magical. Okay, now, that being said, the sigils like Iceland and Vegvísir bear a certain visual resemblance to runic letters, and as much as they use a lot of straight lines, some of those particular straight lines taken together look a little bit like runes. You can arrange the Iceland sigil in such a way that it has 24 points, which equates to the 24 letters in the Elder Futhark alphabet. But they are not runes because they do not represent letters or even words. And they might not be any older than the manuscripts in which they're written down. Right? Iceland, at least we have in some older manuscripts from around 1600, if I remember right. But Vegvísir doesn't show up in something like Galdribok from 1600, regardless of what I think Wikipedia says. I looked at Galdribok, every page of it, read it through this month just to make sure, and I didn't see it there. And I hadn't thought it was there. it's only there in that 1860 manuscript hold. Maybe somewhere else that I don't know about, but it wouldn't be anywhere very old. These don't go back all the way to the Viking Age like those runic letters do. These symbols or sigils, in fact, are probably, and this is the most horrifying thing it seems like I can say on this channel other than I don't believe in magic, maybe these sigils are actually Christian influence, right? We see a lot of grimoires in early modern Europe going around that purport to have magical symbols and sigils that, do this, that, and yon, and they often resemble or even made of the letters of alphabets. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the particular sigils in Icelandic magical manuscripts have origins in continental grimoires or are assembled in analogy with sigils in those continental grimoires out of sort of local ideas about local early modern, not Viking Age ideas about the magical powers of runes. From our perspective, something like the Huld manuscript again is old, but it's not Viking Age old. It's sort of like, associating King Arthur with Big Ben just because they both were there before, present generations were alive, even though one is a hell of a lot closer to living generations than the other one is. Just because something's old doesn't mean that there aren't other things older than it. I have ranted about that at great length in my, I think, underappreciated video called The Past is Past. Well, I try to shoot straight with y'all, right? I'm not here to rain on anyone's parade, but I am here to present information neutrally and objectively, and I don't believe in magic. Nothing has ever made me believe in magic. And I think that it's worth remembering when things come from to put them in the correct time context, right? Just because it seems like everyone who is interested in Norse and Viking stuff seems to have a tattoo of Iceland and or Vegvísir. I seem to be one of the last 10 people on the planet who doesn't. Doesn't mean that that stuff is actually associated with the Viking Age, or that anyone who spoke Old Norse as opposed to early modern or really modern Icelandic would recognize those sigils as something that had a name that they knew, like in Old Norse, Ygis Hjulmur or Vegvísir. So I will continue to try to shoot as straight with y'all as I do at intruders at my residence. And for now, for beautiful Colorado, let me wish you good skepticism and all the best.